Good morning, everyone. We will begin our work for the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee. And I'll ask for a roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Beebe?
Present.
Dr. Beebe is present. Ms. Bofi?
Here.
Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford is not in attendance. Mr. Garvey? Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Gio?
Present.
Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Hill?
Present.
Ms. Hill is present. Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee is present. Dr. Moranti?
Present.
Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange Jones? Present. Ms. Orange Jones is present. Mr. Romer? Mr. Romer is present. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. Mr. Chasson?
Here.
Mr. Chasson is present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Chasson, I think you have an introduction to make.
Yes, it's hard to believe that it's almost been a year already, but I do have the new student representative here with us today, Ms. Haley Campbell from Sulphur High. If you can stand for me. She'll be sitting on the board with me in April, and that'll be my last meeting. So,
Thank you for that, Jim. First item.
So your consent agenda is ready for approval, adding items 2.1 and 2.2.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passed. Next item.
Your first item is on page 10, item 3.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 119, Louisiana School Transportation Specifications and Procedures, Section 2509, Used School Buses. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
Motion to approve? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? We have one public comment, but I'd like to see if there's any discussion on the board.
I'll hold my questions until after the
Thank you, Mr.
comments
Lee.
are made.
And we have Mr. Danny Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Dan Garrett. I'm here today actually representing the St. Tammany Parish School Board, which is kind of where this issue came up. The issue is this. There is a provision in the bulletin that says that buses can't be more than 25 years old. But then there's also a provision in the bulletin that said that a bus that is more than 10 years old can't come into use. This is the situation. You have a bus driver who has a bus that's 8 or 9 years old. They are forced into making a decision: do I retire right now, or do I plan to work for another 15 years? Because if they work for 3 more years and their bus is 11 years old, their bus basically becomes worthless. They can't sell it to anybody. I understand that the school transportation directors met, and they kind of have a problem with completely doing away with the 10-year provision. But I think there is a middle ground, and that is to keep the 10-year provision but create an exception that allows for a bus that exceeds the 10-year but is being transferred to a different owner within the same system. In other words, those directors they've been inspecting that bus every year. They know that 11-year-old bus is a good bus because they're the ones who've been signing off on it every year for the last 11 years. And so merely changing who owns it and who's driving it doesn't have anything to do with the safety of the bus. And so I think that will alleviate that concern. And the hope would be that the action today could reflect the ability for me to work with department staff and come up with the exact language that would be proposed and be adopted at the board meeting tomorrow as far as the specific language to the change in the bulletin that would incorporate that exception, so you would avoid the problem without completely throwing away the 10-year provision.
Madam Chairman.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Garvey. I didn't know if Mr. Lee was going to make his comment first.
I appreciate the comments that have been made. This has been a policy that's been in effect for a long time, and to my knowledge, it works and works well. I understand it's not to the advantage of the driver, but you know, the whole effort is what's best for children and making sure that we transport children safely. So I had some concern with changing it, but I think maybe with some clarification of language, it might make it more acceptable. And as I appreciate what you just said, staying within the system. So if it's in order, I would move that we defer until tomorrow and look at the new language.
Second. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to defer
Yeah.
to tomorrow.
And I'd like to speak to it, too. This was an issue that I brought to the department, and the department, I think, tried very hard to address the issue and tried so hard that they maybe went a little further than they could have. And the language that's being proposed, I think, would be a happy medium.
Yeah.
And I think that the department needs some time until tomorrow to look at the proposed language and come back to us. So I think it would be a good idea to defer this.
Dr. Beebe?
Well, I just simply want to say, so it's my understanding, based on what is presented in our booklet here, that if the bus driver chose not to retire, they could continue operating the bus for the 25 years as long as that bus met safety, inspection, et cetera.
That's correct.
So the issue at hand should not be a concern for the safe transportation of students, because we have the assurance that it does, the buses do meet safety requirements. Is that?
Yeah, it will not change the requirements that the buses be inspected and on an annual basis or anything like that. All it will do is, when you have a situation of a bus that's 11 years old, it's 1 year outside of that 10, and all you're doing is changing who owns and drives the bus is the exact same bus, that the school system would have the ability to do it. And the school systems were concerned about just doing away with the 10-year because, they don't want to get stuck with a bus that's been under someone else's shepherdship, and they feel more confident if they've been in charge of that bus.
Right.
Any further discussion?
I just, I hate to ask you to speak for an organization that you don't represent, but do you happen to know why the drivers, you said something about the drivers were for the 10 years or not for the 10 years? Help me understand that.
What happened is I work for, I represent St. Tammany, and the issue was raised there specifically. That came up in a situation there. And so we started looking at ways to address it. We spoke to Representative Simon. He wanted to address it. He wanted to give BESE the opportunity just to amend the rule rather than address it legislatively. So that it came through Mr. Garvey. It's my understanding that not the drivers, I believe it's the school transportation directors have an organization, and they met, I believe, sometime last week. And when they saw the proposal to just do away with the 10-year provision, they were concerned by that. And so they raised that concern with us, and we said, well, we didn't ask for that. We asked for, and it's my understanding they don't have a problem with what we had proposed. And I think it was just because it was on such a very quick timeline, we just didn't maybe have as much communication with department staff, and I think we can do that over this next day.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion to defer in a second. Do I hear any objections? If not, motion carries. Next
We need to
item.
mark that down. It's a new day.
The next item is on page 12, consideration of policy recommendations relative to implementation of the Jumpstart Career Education Program. And again, we will take each one of these bulletins separately for public comment as well as for motions and seconds. The first bulletin is on page 14, and it's Bulletin 138, Jumpstart Program, and the department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Just as a clarification, aren't we on page 12?
Yeah.
The exec rec is page 12, and then the bulletin revisions begin on page 14 for the Jumpstart Bulletin 138.
So which item are we taking up right now?
Page 14, Bulletin 138, Jumpstart Program. But the exec rec is relative, which is on page 12.
Okay.
I would move approval.
We have a move to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Superintendent?
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I'm going to speak about the entire package as one, and then as you take your individual votes, if you have specific policy questions, just ask me. About a year ago, we kicked off a process of public meetings regarding our diploma. We've in the time since done 4 statewide tours. We've been in every part of our state. We've engaged the business communities across our state, the superintendents and their teams, and I see some of our fantastic career education directors in the audience. We've engaged principals, our accountability commissions, our superintendent's advisory councils, and others in a discussion of essentially what are the alternatives in our education system, both for those students who are pursuing a four-year degree, but in particular for those students who are not immediately pursuing a four-year university degree. And members, I want to just remind you of a sobering statistic. That is that for as much time as we spend here talking about Grambling and LSU and Tech and so on, the fact of it is only 20% of Louisianians have a four-year university degree. That means out of 4.5 million people, more than 3.5 million of those people don't carry those degrees. And we need to raise that number up, of course. But there's a real question. What happens to that other 80%? Well, 8% of them have a two-year college degree. So take our 20% number and up it to 28%. Members, that leaves you with 72% of our population that does not have a two-year or a four-year university degree, college degree. And here's the problem. While 2 generations ago that may have been okay, the job boom that's been much discussed across our state over the last several years is a job boom that will be characterized by jobs that require a technical education and education after high school. The overwhelming number of those jobs requires an education after high school. Does not mean you need to go be an economics major or a physics major at Southeastern. It does mean that you're going to need technical training, basic mathematics and literacy, as well as technical workplace skills in order to succeed. That is what Jumpstart tries to do. Jumpstart tries to address those kids, to give them a path to middle class, to allow them to continue their education. It does that in 5 ways, and these bulletins address those 5 ways. So I'll just go through them very quickly. 1, it stops labeling kids as career or college. You don't make a choice any longer when you're 13 years old whether or not you're going to be a career kid or a college kid. All of our kids are kids that need a pathway to the middle class and a job after high school, an education after high school. 2, it creates regional teams of industry, of community colleges, and of our school systems that come together across parish lines to provide credentials that are approved by, on a statewide basis, our Workforce Investment Council. And I'm thrilled today that we have representatives from the Workforce Investment Council here today. So that if you take a Jumpstart curriculum, you will be the recipient of credentials that are meaningful in the workplace. Those credentials are dual enrollment credentials or national industry credentials, such as NCCER in the construction industry, for example, or AWS. But many of them are dual enrollment credentials, which is why we're going to rely on our higher education system as a partner. Third, we're going to reward this in our accountability system. You get a dual enrollment credential, you have an NCCER credential, an AWS credential. You should be rewarded because those give you life opportunities just as you are if you pass an AP test or pass a dual enrollment credit for TOPS credit. Fourth, we're proposing to fund it. Later in the day in Mr. Guillot's committee, you will hear an MFP proposal that both adds dollars for high school courses taught within the high school that are industry and frankly are more expensive than what it costs to teach arts and sciences courses, or outside the high school and can be taught at a community college or a private provider like Associated Builders and Contractors, for example. We've got to fund this. It's time to admit that teaching Shakespeare is less expensive than teaching nursing or electrician. Fifth, we're asking our educators to up their credentials, but we're providing opportunities for educators to receive those credentials on the state's dollar. If you are going to teach welding in today's workforce, we want you to be a certified welder. If you're going to teach nurse assistant, we want you to be a certified nurse assistant. We're going to give our educators time, but we're going to require that they have those credentials, and we're going to lower the barriers to professionals coming in from their craft trade or their line of work into our schools. Today there's significant coursework required to even make that change. We're going to take down some of those barriers so that we can have great professionals come in and be hired by our school systems to teach Jumpstart courses. We think if we do these 5 things, we can provide a pathway for literally tens of thousands of kids to a professional career and continuing their education. Now let me say one more thing. you would have the impression by some of the excitement that this has all generated that people need to turn around and do this tomorrow. I will tell you there are places in this state that are already doing that. I'm looking at Sheila Woods out in the audience from Bossier Parish, and I know BESE member Representative Superintendent Smith, you know Sheila and the entire Bossier team very well. They're prepared to do a lot of this stuff immediately. I'll tell you there are other parishes, and I was in New Orleans. We don't have a lot of career facilities in New Orleans post-Katrina. It might take us a little while to figure out how to do some of this work in some other parts of our state. That's fine. This is on a 3-year timeline, such that it really is only 3 years from now when districts would be required to do this. If they wanted to start today, they could start today. And in fact, later today, you'll be hearing 8G-funded grant proposals so that those regional teams that want to start immediately will get startup funds, $75,000 grants, to do this work immediately. So if you want to start soon, you can start immediately, and you'll get the funding to do it. If it's going to take a while, that's fine too. We're going to have leaders, and we're going to have those who are watching, and that's totally fine. Madam Chairman, I thank you for the chance to present. I look forward to hearing the questions from the members.
Mr. Lee.
Is there any particular reason why we cannot take all of these as one motion, and then if there are questions on any one, they can be addressed? But I don't see the point in.
We have several public comments for the different revisions, and as part of our notice of intent process, we need to take them individually.
We have 9 public comments, and I would like to invite the first 4 up. That would be Jeff Lynn, Lee Barrios, Deidre Jackson, and Darrell Hampton. If you would please come to the table. Mr. Lynn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, and members of the board. Thank you very much for allowing me to come briefly and speak about in favor of this proposal. Just a brief summary of my position. I'm Executive Director of Workforce Development Programs for LED. I started a program 5 years ago called LED Fast Start. The last 4 years we've been ranked #1 in the nation for what we do, helping our companies thrive and grow in our state. So constantly I'm in companies almost every day listening to their concerns about workforce. And I'm probably the biggest advocate for the Jumpstart program. I think it's something that, and I've told this to Superintendent White, this is something we needed in this state 25 years ago, and I'm so excited that we have the opportunity in front of us to help out all of our great companies, whether manufacturing, construction companies, or if it's a very high-tech digital media company coming into the state, or if it's a programming company, large, medium, and small. This is something I feel really, really strongly that we must have and we must need. Many of you, and I apologize, I don't know everyone on the board, but across the state, there's areas that we must have this. And I could just talk about the Bayou region. The Bayou region is very difficult for us to get people to move to that area because there's low unemployment. It's very, very costly to move there in that area for an hourly employee. So the workforce must be coming from the technical colleges and the high schools, the CTE programs. Companies like Bollinger, Swest, Gulf Island, those companies would hire every graduate that would go through a certified program and a high school program there and start them out at very, very good wages, probably starting around $14, $15, $16 an hour. Within a year, probably go to $22 to $24 an hour, making a very comfortable living in that region. If I go to central Louisiana, Crest Industries, I don't know if Crest is here, or Distran, or UTLX, or any of those companies, they're dying for this program to be into their high schools. We've got some great results going on. We're actually rolling a new certification program that we designed through Fast Start, rolled it out to the 2-year schools, and this will be part of the program for the Jump Start as well. It's called Certification for Manufacturing. We're actually in Bossier Parish doing that right now for the new Bentler project. Bentler is a $1 billion project coming into the state, hiring 675 employees. It's a German company, so they're used to this model already. And so this is the closest thing that we could create to their model that would help them and help them decide to come into Louisiana. So right now we have classes going on that at Bossier Parish Community College, at the Shreveport, Louisiana Technical College, both in Shreveport and Minden, and also rolling out. We've got great response from Bossier Parish and also Caddo Parish to roll it into their high schools as well. The key thing is that Ventler, the company, is going to interview everyone that completes this program. So if you have a child that's coming through 11th to 12th grade with this program or a similar program in that region, they're going to get an interview with a company of great stature. If you go out to Sewella, out into Lake Charles, the same thing is needed there, except it's a regional approach. So if you go to different parts of the state, the different types of programs that we need in each of the schools are different. And that's where we could play a big role in that. We're always knowing the high demand, high wage jobs, what's hot in that particular region, like the North Shore. The North Shore is an aspirational area where we could have some very high-tech electronic companies. You know, aspirational companies would be, I would love for the next iPhone or the 6 versions from now to be, made in St. Tammany Parish in a very high-tech. That particular plant, if it has 2,000 employees, probably 500 of them are professional jobs. The 1,500 jobs are going to require high school degree and some technical college programs. It's extremely important for us to make sure that the board understands how important this is for Louisiana economic development and our efforts. We're working on.
And I'm sure you have so much more to say with this, but your time is now up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Appreciate it. Ms. Barrios.
Lee Barrios, retired teacher from St. Tammany. I know that opposing this entire thing as it's presented, and I think, again, we have an implementation problem here in pushing this whole huge change all at once. I know it's like swimming upstream, but I feel like as a teacher whose job it is to carry forth the true purpose of education, particularly public education, which is to provide our students with the academic and the social abilities necessary to become active participants in our democracy. We've now, with reform, or Common Core, really turned that into providing a workforce for private industry. You can object to the word privatization, Superintendent White, but this is a perfect example of privatization, the move to privatization. Don't get me wrong, I totally get that not every child will, can, or should go to college. I have 3 of my own children. I taught students. It has, in fact, though, been the mantra of so-called reform and this board that every child should be prepared for college and should go to college. We have charters with names like Pre-K through 2nd grade Sci-Fi College Prep Academy. What are we going to call these schools now? Pre-K through 2nd grade Workforce Academy for Industrial Vocational Arts? I don't know. I went to Votech school myself and studied drafting. I thought then that our Votech system was the best kept secret in the state. Probably still is. Why are we not collaborating with that system and industry and forming coalitions between industry and training facilities rather than converting our schools and spending the money that's going to be diverted from those courses and those extracurricular activities and electives that our students need? Our curriculum needs to ensure that all students are prepared for life, can engage in moving our democracy forward, can participate and appreciate the meaning that the arts and sciences bring not only to a successful and free society, but a thriving economy. Children do not need to be making the mental translation to adulthood focused on employment at 15 years old, or pre-K, for heaven's sakes. This is a sea change that moves so far away from the purpose of public education, which is important for every child. Thank you.
Before I call on Ms. Jackson, I'll ask Darrell Hampton, Sheila Woods, and Philip Rosenman to please come to the table. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Deidre Jackson, and I lead government affairs for BASF Corporation in North America, particularly in Louisiana, local, state, and federal affairs. I appreciate the opportunity to address you this morning. I am here on behalf of BASF and to discuss the efforts of the Workforce Investment Council as it relates to the Jump Start program. As I'm sure you're aware, the state of Louisiana is currently experiencing record numbers of new investment and expansion in the petrochemical industry, which has highlighted a tremendous shortage of industrial construction workers needed to fill over 80,000 jobs by 2016 across the state. In the summer of 2013, I was asked by the chairman of the Workforce Investment Council, Charles Monod, to chair a subcommittee of the task force that was created to address this shortage. My subcommittee specifically addressed career and technical education across the state. The members of this subcommittee included career and tech education supervisors across the state, district superintendents, state legislators, staff from LDOE, the Board of Regents, Louisiana Workforce Commission, Louisiana Office of Student Financial Assistance, and representatives from major manufacturing facilities, labor unions, and local chambers of commerce. Over the last few months, we have completed various meetings and workshops to discover significant barriers or procedural changes that needed to occur to provide widespread improvements and support to the large universe of students and parents that struggle with limited options that are offered in career and technical education. We provided our findings to various stakeholders, including LDOE, and Superintendent White and the staff at LDOE were extremely receptive to our recommendations, and it is evident in the Jumpstart Blueprint. BASF is a global company, and it is the largest chemical company in the world, with its largest manufacturing site in North America, right in Geismar, Louisiana. They are the largest employer in Ascension Parish, which has had capital investments for new and expanding businesses that have topped $1 billion for the third consecutive year. If we fail as a community to provide our citizens with the education and technical skills needed to fill these jobs, these investments will be lost to other states and to other countries. In closing, I implore you to approve this policy recommendation and the revisions needed to implement the Jumpstart program. The high school students of Louisiana need solid educational preparation and opportunities that will lead to viable careers that are readily available in their own communities. I assure you that BASF and many other industry partners are committed to this process in the short and long term. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Hampton.
Good morning, rather. Superintendent White, first, I want to thank you. I'm Sheila Woods, and it appears to be a Northwest delegation here. Sheila Woods from Bossier, I'm from DeSoto, and Dr. Phillip here from Shreveport. Dr. White, I would like to say you have answered many of our concerns through the Northwest Jumpstart. We've been meeting since June when it all got started. We do want to, and it seems like you've answered some, because coming from a small district, it's going to be very difficult to do an implementation immediately. So the 3 years is good things, because with small schools, you know, personnel is a factor. And we also are glad to hear you will be discussing funding later on, because that will be an issue when we're dealing with human capital. We want to also have you to look at the levels of certification. I'm thinking of one in particular, NCCER welding, which we offer in 3 of our high schools. To even reach the level 1, that's going to even be stretching it, and I think, which is basic. And I think you have that as basic. If they earn that NCCER 1 level 1, we're suggesting that you all look at possibly offering that as advanced. We're also asking for more flexibility, which, being with the Northwest Partnership, we have a lot of that we will have regional partnerships. Currently, in your EOC offering state, at one of my other small high schools, early childhood is thriving, and we already have collaboration with Southern University of Shreveport, and presently that's not part of it. So I think eventually in a waiver, and that may be part of that flexibility, where we are allowed to offer that, though it's not your high-wage, high-demand job. But we do have that very successful program, and those students are earning those certificates when they leave our high schools. It is causing us, which is good, to collaborate with our LTC campus in Mansfield, which is probably the smallest campus in the state. So their course offerings are minimum as well. So we are asking again for flexibility in there as we collaborate with them and creating courses in the Northwest area, particularly for DeSoto and some of the other areas. Just continue to keep that on your mind. We do appreciate your response. I think you responded to us just under a week ago of many of our concerns, and so we do appreciate that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. We appreciate that. Mrs. Woods.
I think Jumpstart has probably been overshadowed. I think Jumpstart has probably been overshadowed by Common Core and other areas.
If you could just pull the mic to you. That's
lots of people
Is the green light
do not
on?
look at it in. Lots of people do not look at it and have not looked at it and really studied it in depth. So I'm asking for more time. Yes, we need reform. We need high standards. But we really need to look at it and take the time to implement a program that will work for all of our children, not just a few children. Yes, high skill, high wage is important, but many of our students are going to be employed in other jobs. They need the chance to learn those skills while they're in high school and have the opportunity to graduate from high school and get a job. I realize this year's freshmen cannot do their 5-year plan as 8th graders, the incoming freshmen, because right now we do not know what the graduation requirements are going to be. But yet as 8th graders, by law, we are required for them to do a 5-year plan. What are we supposed to tell them? This needs to wait and give us time to get everything put together, not only at the state level but regional level, so we can give them an accurate definition of what we're going to expect from them while they're in high school. We need more areas or pathways. There is not a single area in the state plan in business, in marketing, which is the #1 area of need nationwide, in family and consumer science, which leads to many degrees in hospitality, and in medical fields, and there's not one in the leading employer in Louisiana, agriculture. All these need to be considered and added to the plan. Some things about the requirements for the advanced certification. The technical certificate, according to some of our post-secondary partners, requires 30 to 90-hour college hours. And then to get an IBC on top of that and complete 2 years of Common Core their freshman, sophomore years, there's not enough hours, even if they stayed in high school 6 years, to get all that done. IBC, to get level 3, by the time you have to do the basic core, level 1, level 2, level 1, level 2, and the basic core takes over 600 hours just to work for that certificate. That's not including teaching all the skills that are needed to go along with it. For carpentry, to get level 2, you still have the core, you still have level 1, you still have level 2. Takes over 400 hours, plus learning all the skills to go with it.
I'm so sorry that your time is up, Mrs. Woods, but I appreciate your testimony.
I have many other things that I
I'm
have
sure.
real concerns about. I wish I had more time because this is something that our students, our employers, and our parents deserve to have looked at in more detail because we're hurting students. We're going to see graduation rates fall and dropout rates rise because students are going to realize real fast they can't do all this and graduate in 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I call on Mr. Roseman, I'd like to invite Liz Gary, Allison LeBlanc, and Rudy Gomez to the table. Mr. Roseman.
Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Philip Roseman. I'm a physician from Shreveport, Louisiana. I think from some of the testimony you can see that really for Northwest Louisiana, there's a great excitement about Jump Start and a desire to make it the best it can be. We feel like it's we need to do this right and move this forward. I'm here today, though, to represent Blueprint Louisiana as chairman of Blueprint Louisiana and as an executive board member of the Committee of 100. Both these groups are CEOs of some of the small and large businesses in Louisiana. And we're united totally in support of Jump Start and your efforts in moving forward changes in career education in our state. We support Jump Start because it creates new opportunities for students. We support Jump Start because it brings a relevant curriculum for some people that may not have an immediate goal as going to a 4-year university. We support Jump Start because it provides great relevance for many students. Some students are not going to apply themselves in school or finish school unless they have a real reason that they can see in their future, and this may offer that to some of these students. We support Jump Start because it not only provides opportunity for students and parents, but also for our state as a whole. We see this as a message to Louisiana that we, the state of Louisiana, are investing in the development of people in key jobs in our state. And we support Jump Start because we recognize the huge gap that Superintendent White talked about. There's a huge gap between the 75% or so of children that are going to graduate from high school, and hopefully more as the future goes, and the 28% or so who complete some sort of post-secondary education. Dealing with those in the middle is important. And we feel that Louisiana has done a great job in dealing with building basic literacy skills for those that are high risk. I think we do a great job of giving gifted students opportunities. What we're talking about here with Jump Start and what we talk about with the Common Core standards is dealing with the 60% of students and children in the middle. And this is going to be whether we survive and thrive as a state or not. It's the majority of students in our school system. And we support Jump Start because it's an opportunity for business and education to collaborate. We need to get past the idea that we can't do it. We can sit down together as the pre-K through 12 education, business community, and higher education in these issues. And lastly, we support Jump Start because you're approaching this the right way. You've taken time to go around the state and listen to people. I've been a part of some of that listening, and many, many others have, and had the opportunity to give feedback on what's presented to you today. We believe the application of a regional approach to this is the right approach because, like in my sector, all health care is local. I know it's probably not a good idea in Baton Rouge to say this, but to some degree, all education is local. So taking it to the local level means a great deal. I think it's very positive in what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roseman. I really appreciate that.
It very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ms. Liz Gary.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Liz Gary, and I live in St. Tammany Parish. I am the parent of a son with a developmental disability. I'm disappointed to hear that a program is about to be voted on that is already complete and has already been planned in the department without consideration for all students. Jump Start is not a diploma option for all students. We have known that Common Core was going to be implemented for years. We have known that Law 2 was going to no longer be allowed. You were aware that PART was going to be the choice of assessments. Yet we have done nothing to think about students with disabilities and what they will need to succeed in order to get a diploma. Why were individuals with disabilities once again left out of the planning? Why do they continue to be a second thought? At the SEAT meeting a couple weeks ago, Jump Start was introduced to us as the great opportunity for an alternate diploma. Then when asked more specifically how our kids will fit in, it was stated, we're creating a task force to look at that. Why the afterthought? Why were our children not considered this before it was completed? I'm sorry. According to a quote from Expanding Opportunities for Louisiana Students on the department website, it states, as part of the Jump Start initiative, the Department of Education will convene a working group of practitioners to design a solution regarding diploma options. This needs to be, where are the parents? Practitioners, where are the parents? This needs to be more than a task force. We need parents and professionals from around the state to have input into what is needed. Several organizations have collaborated and put together a proposal with alternate pathways to a diploma that appears to not even have been considered. It has been stated that only 20% of our students with disabilities receive a high school diploma. At this time, our children have nothing to look forward to. They are being stressed to the max with standards that have been on grade level with minimal accommodations and no modifications. They do not see a diploma in their future. Why should and why would they continue to work hard for nothing? That statistic of 27% will continue to spiral downward since our kids were not considered in this equation. I keep hearing over and over that they've gone around the state, but our kids and our parents and our families were not included in that planning of the Jump Start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gary. Allison LeBlanc.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Allison LeBlanc, and I agree. We should have higher standards for all of our children. I'm an advocate for my 12-year-old son that had cancer and a stroke at a very young age. Disabilities can affect everyone. It has no prejudice. It can affect you now or later when you become older or get in an accident or ill. My son Caleb has an active IEP and is on the Law 2 diploma track. The standardized tests are too challenging for him, as with the other peers in SPED. They need proper assistance, and they don't get it when they are taking their test. They're not able to complete them or understand some of the test the way they're worded. If everyone is required to take the same test and it is all high stakes, then why do we even have IEPs? We're failing our children with IEPs, individualized education plans. That is what IEP stands for. We are setting these children up for failure. Statistics show that children that are held back or retained or dropped out, they're depressed and they have much lower self-esteem. I feel high standards are wonderful for everyone, but you have to know how to implement it without harming our children. Jump Start is not including these kids. They are created individual by God, and we are all have our own strong points and weaknesses. We need to allow our students to carry on with their peers and still receive the aids and services that they need to help them continue to grow and learn with their age-appropriate peers. Why would we want to raise our children to believe that they are not worthy of a diploma? We want them to be all they can be and do all that they can do. The way Jump Start is designed now, with the extreme standards of ACT at 18 and 9th grade reading levels, most of our children will not qualify for this program. Imagine yourself today without a high school diploma. Where would you be? So how are we creating leaders and expanding opportunities for children, empowering families, and helping our community to advance in this increasingly competitive global market? if we're boxing our special education children in and truly not following their IEPs. Let these children show our community what wonderful things they can do, what an asset they are to the community and not a burden. Don't create more debt for our community. Instead, let the standards be high and help them help themselves to be a part of the community with a diploma, to become an upstanding citizen and a taxpayer. BESE's vision is that a quality public education system of such excellence that all children are given the opportunity to develop their fullest potential. And the philosophy for BESE is that children are valued and every child will learn.
Thank you, Mrs. LeBlanc.
I just wanted to say I understand that BESE members don't receive a salary or benefits, so you must be here in the pure satisfaction of doing the right thing for our children. I want to thank you all for taking the oath and continuing to attend each long and grueling meeting on behalf of our children. And it would be sad for me to see my son become an Eagle Scout but not have a high school diploma.
Thank you so much. Before I call on Mr. Gomez, I'm going to ask Jason Vasey, Dr. James Owens, and Ashley McReynolds to please come to the table. Mr. Gomez.
Dr. Moran.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
If I
Dr.
may, because the young lady made some comments, and I need to direct my question to Superintendent White. Are we excluding special ed students from Jump Start?
No, and what I would propose is that we hear all of the concerns, and then I'll respond to some of them if that's okay. But I'll certainly respond to that one, yeah.
Mr. Gomez.
Madam Chair, thank you. My name is Rudy Gomez, and I'm the project manager for Blueprint Louisiana. I'm here with Dr. Roseman to voice Blueprint Louisiana support for Jump Start. As Dr. Roseman mentioned, Blueprint is a statewide organization, nonpartisan organization that has worked for 7 years now for what we believe good public policy changes. We believe Jump Start is a terrific new idea, and we would encourage BESE to allow it to develop and grow and be implemented properly. It will be a heavy lift. It's a lot of work, but we think the design is good. We think the effort that's been put into getting collaboration at the regional level, understanding the needs of all the different stakeholders has been good, and we appreciate that effort. Most importantly, we like the pragmatic approach to this. It recognizes, as the superintendent said and as others have said here this morning, that approximately 70% of our people in this state don't wind up with a 2-year degree, much less a 4-year degree or beyond that. And we need, out of our high schools, a ramp to success for all of our students. And we've done a good job with some of those students at different points, but we need a good ramp for all of them. And we think Jump Start fills a huge void that we have today in recognizing the value and the dignity of all good jobs and hard work and learning that it takes. And we are in an environment and an economy where virtually everybody who wants to have success after high school is going to have to gain some additional skills. And we think Jump Start's a good connection to that, and we would urge your support for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gomez. Mr. Vasey.
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, it's Ian Vasey, and I am the Executive Director of Business Development with the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. My organization represents 1,200 businesses in the capital region, and we're also charged with coordinating the economic development efforts of the 9-parish capital region, about 815,000 population. We're here this morning to speak in favor of the Jump Start proposal. I pulled some numbers before I came in this morning. This week, the capital region was named number 2 in the nation for new expanded facilities for industrial and office corporate projects. There's about something like $9 billion worth of projects that have been announced last year alone. 48 new major projects. That doesn't include retail projects, hospitals, public things. These are just major economic driver projects. Something in the region of about 5,000 new jobs, almost 50 new projects. So you think about that. The latest numbers I've seen coming out of LSU in terms of projections, in terms of number of jobs needed, we're about 80,000 workers short, skilled construction trade short. So you think about that. And when we talk to companies all the time across the country, we had people in Germany last week. I was in Denver presenting to groups of companies, and the biggest thing that we hear is skilled labor and the importance of being able to provide a workforce for these companies. That's something that we really need to start thinking about, and how do we connect the skill sets that are the kids coming out of college, coming out of high school, with the needed jobs for the future, and that's something that we're paying very close attention to. That's number one, I think. More important than incentives, more important than tax conditions, things like that. But it's, can you provide the workers and the skilled labor available for these companies? One of the other things we're very interested in, we particularly support, is the regional advisory councils of the Jump Start program. That's going to be made up of business leaders, and they're going to have involvement in developing the curriculum, so that we can these are the people that are going to actually be hiring the people to work in their businesses, so we need to connect those. Very briefly, Baton Rouge Area Chamber supports this organization and this proposal. Thank you.
And I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
Everybody gets my name wrong.
Thank you, Mr. BESE. Dr. Owens.
Thank you very much. I sat in this very seat in 2005 at a joint meeting of BESE and Board of Regents. It was a crisis. We just had Hurricane Katrina. We had to rebuild Louisiana, and in the process, we rebuilt lives. We could not wait. We had training programs in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lake Charles. We have many, many success stories about that. But I'm here for a dozen reasons of why we need to move on this. We cannot wait. We have to. I was at Blackman High School yesterday. We had 12 students that signed a letter of commitment. They already had their industry-based certifications in welding, pipe fitting. And in welding, it wasn't just tackers. We went to plate. These students signed a commitment in front of the contractors, Turner Industries, Performance Industries, and I could go on and on. The commitment was to get my high school diploma, go to work, stay drug-free, and these are going to be productive citizens. You'll read about it and I know you'll read about it because you care about education. But the parents were in there. They were almost in tears. You know, we have signings for athletes. These were signings for students. And I think these students are going to help Louisiana. I'm for it. I'd be glad to answer any questions, but I'm not going to take any more of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. And last, Mrs. McReynolds.
Good morning. Superintendent White opened his remarks about Jump Start and stated that all students needed a pathway to the middle class. But once again, a population of students with disabilities, specifically those with developmental disabilities, have been left out of that very opportunity of making it to the middle class, because Jump Start simply does not offer a diploma pathway for all students. As a parent of a child with a developmental disability, reaching some of the required standards of Jump Start, such as an 18 on an ACT, is just not realistic, or to pass 11th and 12th grade end of course tests. But there are so many other things that he can do. He can pass tests, he can read, he can do math, and he can achieve so many other goals. But because the department has set one bar to measure success, he will once again be deemed unsuccessful. I urge the department to stop placing our students on the back burner when considering diploma pathways for all students. Allow all students to reach their individual maximum potential as set in their IEPs. And I do agree with the department that those closest to the students who truly understand their needs best are being given that power. But I urge you to extend this opportunity to all students so they will have a pathway to earn a diploma. If not,
while others are leading the charge, my son will be left watching in the distance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McReynolds. Before I entertain a motion for an amendment, I'd like Superintendent White to address.
I didn't hear my name called.
Yours is for a different bulletin. This is Bulletin A, which is the Jump Start Bulletin. Your card is filled out for Bulletin B, which is 111.
That's fine if we're going to have the, I thought
Yes.
we were taking everything.
No, separately. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I want to thank all of the speakers. The passion around this issue is one, I feel like the discussion is actually about students, which is a refreshing thing, whether or not we disagree or agree. So it was a good discussion, and I know we'll hear more comments. I want to just respond to a couple of the factual issues. Number one, to Ms. Wood's comments regarding the timing. We've been out having discussions for a year. I think we're going to continue to come back to you over the course of the next several years with little tweaks here and there, no doubt about it. And I would add, by the way, Representative Fannin and Senator Kostelka passed this bill through the legislature nearly 5 years ago. So it's been a long time coming. And I think that her point, Ms. Wood's point, is very well taken around we're not to the final point yet, but on some level we've got to give school systems the permission to start doing the work. And that's really what today is about. Give them permission to start doing it, know it's real, and we'll keep working things out. If we were going to require the people, all of them have to implement this by August, absolutely that would be a mistake. But given that we're on a 3-year timeline until implementation, I think you have our commitment that we'll keep working out the kinks with you and come back. We need to give schools permission to start. I want to make sure a couple of facts very clear, and I would ask that the media and members of the audience be very clear to this. There were a couple of things that were said that were wrong, and I know not intentionally wrong. I think somewhere in the ether some of the facts got mistaken. There is no admission requirement for Jump Start. There is no ACT requirement. There is no literacy level requirement. All students are eligible to participate in Jump Start. There are not admissions requirements. Now, so how is this all wrapped up in issues of special education, which is obviously the passion that's there and the concern is rightly placed. Number one, with respect to diplomas, there is a long-standing debate about diplomas and how students with disabilities should be considered when it comes to earning a high school diploma. That is true whether you're on a career diploma path, whether you're on a TOPS Core 4 path. We believe that, one, students who are currently called non-diploma bound, meaning they are LA2, their disability is a source of them not achieving the traditional standards. They are called non-diploma bound as a matter of tradition. We believe that should be changed. At the same time, how it should be changed is a very, very complicated question. Let me just give you some background. There are fantastic programs in our state already where students spend significant amounts of time doing vocational, occupational type work. They are graduating with jobs, they're graduating credentialed. These are students who are going to be required to achieve jobs upon graduating, and yet they're called non-diploma bound. We think that's wrong. As was said, we want to commission a committee of practitioners as well as parents that will produce a proposal to you as to how Jump Start can be used to provide such students an opportunity to achieve a diploma. That is a different thing, however, from every student with disabilities having their diploma be contingent on their IEP, which Ms. McReynolds mentioned. That would mean that every student with disabilities, which is 75,000 students across the state, would have a different criteria for graduating from high school than all other students. That obviously is a different thing from addressing can Jump Start suit the needs of kids who are currently called non-diploma bound. So what I would urge you to take away from my perspective on this question that was raised regarding students with disabilities, number one, misinformation we've got to clear up. There's no 18 ACT admissions requirement. There's no literacy requirement. This should serve all students, in particular students with disabilities. Two, we have fantastic programs that should help students who are currently called non-diploma bound become eligible. No student should be called non-diploma bound. We need to stop that. That's why we want to have a committee to develop it. Third, whether you're on a TOPS path, whether you're on a Jumpstart path, or whether you're doing both. Whether your diploma should be based on IEPs or a standard diploma path is an issue that's wholly separate from Jumpstart. It's being raised in this context understandably, but it's wholly separate. We're talking about 75,000 kids and what their diploma requirements should be. That is an important discussion. It's not really this discussion. I thank you, Madam Chairman, for those. I'm happy to entertain comments or questions.
I think we have an amendment to this, and
I have an amendment. So should I do this now? Or, okay. So to account for the gradual participation of local education agencies in the Jumpstart program, I would like to make the following motion. I move to approve as a notice of intent revisions to Bulletin 138 as presented by the LDE, amending 305A to read. 305A to read, each LEA, and this is the new language, participating in a regional team shall establish policies and procedures for students participating in an approved Jumpstart program. Such policies and procedures shall include but not be limited to the following. That's number one. Amending 305B1 to read, each LEA, again, participating in a regional team shall make available to all students the courses and training experiences included in approving Jumpstart programs in order to meet career diploma graduation requirements or to satisfy elective credit requirements. And finally, amending 305D to read, each LEA participating in a regional team, so on and so forth.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just want to make some clarification for Superintendent White. Law 2 students are not non-diploma track. It's Law 1 students. Law 2 students, they are eligible for a diploma, but it's Law 1 students that are not. So I just want to make sure the audience understand that and that the media don't pick it up and misinterpret that and misform the community.
That's actually not accurate. You're right that Law 1 students, almost by definition, are not diploma bound. But there is a subset of Law 2 students who are commonly called non-diploma bound also. And the difference between Law 1 and Law 2 is that Law 2 kids are supposed to be pursuing the regular standards, the regular academic standards.
Correct.
They may be well behind, but they're supposed to be pursuing the regular standards. And at the same, Law 1 students are not. They're pursuing a different set of standards. At the same time, therefore, calling a set of Law 2 students non-diploma bound, which is common practice, is, I think, not something we should do. I think any student pursuing the regular standards, maybe this is what you're getting at, should be allowed to pursue a regular diploma.
Yeah, and there are some students that are Law 2 that are eligible to receive the diploma track if they choose to. I just want to make the clarification.
Yes.
So people can understand.
Thank you.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes, I had a question for the superintendent. You mentioned that there's been some misunderstanding about requirements to get into Jumpstart, ACT of 18 and reading requirements. Do you know where what was the origination point of those misunderstandings, or what caused it? What do we need to change to clear it up?
I don't know if there are specific materials that we'd be happy to take a look at them. It looks like there's going to be a conversation between our team and these folks back here to see how we can clarify.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And Mr. Superintendent, again, would you just, not to be repetitive, but it seems like the timing issue, and I'd like for you to just assure and ensure, I guess, that the locals will have that authority, but also address a little bit of the concern about maybe some courses that were not included maybe in the original proposal. And I'd like to add that I worked with Chairman Fannin and Senator Kostelka on this issue 5 years ago, and I know that they are extremely devoted to this project to make it succeed, and I think that's what they're looking for, is let's find a way to really make that legislation succeed.
Just to talk a little bit about the courses specifically, the most popular courses, career credentials that are awarded today in our state are customer service, Microsoft Office, customer service and Microsoft Office. Those are the most popular. Now, those are valuable things. They're foundational, however. Those are not things that get you credits in college or that get you, credentials in the workplace. So one thing Jumpstart does is it starts with asking the Workforce Investment Council, which is the statewide entity charged with overseeing industry-based certificates. They're the ones who are going to say, here are the statewide credentials. At the same time, you could have let's just say in New Orleans, forestry is probably not a very prominent job in New Orleans. Similarly, there are parts of rural Louisiana where hotel and hospitality might not be a very popular job option in those areas. But hotel and hospitality, while it's not statewide, is very important in the New Orleans area, and forestry in the central and north Louisiana areas is very important there. So the regional teams are allowed to create regional credentials, just as the Workforce Investment Council creates statewide credentials. Thus, you're going to have a lot of variation from one region to the next in terms of what courses and credentials are taught and earned.
So actually, the teams have the flexibility with regard to the course requirements?
Yes.
Maybe there's some misinformation about that too that we can clear up.
I think, we're going to get into this work. This is something it's a new way of approaching this. It's not the state saying everything has to be the same. It's instead acknowledging that regions are different. They're going to have to develop some of this coursework on their own. I think that the state had to start somewhere, and the state had to say, here are 35 statewide areas. In other words, you can go to Monroe, you can go to Lake Charles, anywhere in between, and there is work to be had in these 35 areas. However, in some areas, such as veterinary care, in some areas such as I said, forestry. I was in Homa, and they asked me about river pilots. Why isn't river pilots on the list? Well, there's some parts of our state where river pilots may not be that big a deal. Trust me, I'm well informed on this. In Homa, it is. So, so you're going to have to accommodate for some of these regional distinctions also.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Vick.
This is a phenomenal piece of policy. And I just want to highlight a few things relative to it. I mean, Career has been, trying to fulfill this. Representative Smith has talked about 5 years ago. This has been a struggle to get to this point, but I don't want us to underestimate the innovation and the efforts that the department and the superintendent have put into this at a very timely point for our state with the need. It's been grassroots. It's impressive to me that we're leveraging resources across entities now. We're just not looking at pots of money and staying within those pots of money. We're now getting the synergy and the resources to make this happen. There's flexibility in it based on the needs, which has been spoken about. It builds upon the current synergy that economic development has relative to their job training programs. So now we're starting to build upon what's been taking place there for several years. The superintendent mentioned the alignment now with funding in the MFP to help train some of these individuals is impressive for that to come together like it is. But I want to remind the group it's not perfect. It's going to require tweaking. I think the superintendent has worked that into the policy. And if there's one thing I've learned on the board, I mean, any of this stuff is tough work. And any time you push in the envelope is tough work, and it's going to take some tweaking. And so I obviously am supporting it by my comments, but I really appreciate the superintendent's and the department's effort in building this from the bottom up with the vision that you've had.
Is there any objection to the motion, Dr. Beebe?
I want to discuss, if I may. Herb Bassett was unable to be here today, so he did provide me with information that he would like to have read into the record. So if you allow me, I will begin. It says the LDOE proposes giving extra points for students who graduate with both AP credits and a Jumpstart credential. As a band director, I oppose this incentivization for earning both. I do not oppose offering Jumpstart credentials, equal incentives to AP classes, etc. I do not object to students taking both AP classes and pursuing technical credentials on their own initiative, but when LDOE gives extra points, guidance counselors will encourage students to drop band, choir, art, etc., to pursue technical credentials instead of continuing with a more liberal arts-oriented curriculum. This is a concrete concern. I wrote a letter to a junior high last year where the guidance counselor was advising all 7th grade band students to drop band as 8th graders and take an elective for high school credit because of the points earned towards the SPS, School Performance Score, based on high school credits earned by 9th grade students. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed and the damage was minimized. LDOE proposes introducing points for 6-year graduates. Having studied School Performance Score policy, it is unclear to me how this will be calculated with the graduation data running only 1 year behind. This is only a concern. I do not oppose the awarding of points here. So I didn't know this was the place to read it.
Are we ready to vote? Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item.
So the next bulletin begins on page 19, and that's Bulletin 111, the Louisiana School District and State Accountability System. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
See, I don't know. This is with...
And I really do want to thank those who are coming to testify, and we appreciate your time and your effort. And I also appreciate that you will hold to your 3-minute limit. I appreciate that too. So we have 2 public comments for this. We have Lee Barrios and Michael Desautels. Oh, thank you.
My name is Michael Desautels. I'm a retired educator. I've been very heavily involved with the career diploma. I want y'all to know that I support completely the program to implement this. We could have started much quicker 3 or 4 years ago and done a lot more, but it's never too late. We've got to do our best to catch up. There are some who believe that we shouldn't have industry dictating what kids take to get ready for their industries, but I see that differently. I believe that if we can give our students an opportunity for good jobs in industry, it would be foolish to cut them out by not having a curriculum that allows them to qualify for those jobs. So I look at it completely differently from the student's point of view. It's a wonderful opportunity that they have to participate in career training. But again, on this particular issue concerning the points, I've had a serious objection to the grading system that we have for our schools, for our high schools. I think that often we shortchange some of our good schools by putting all the emphasis on academics. So there is a step forward here in the point system by giving credit for the work keys, for example, towards the high school points. It's not clear yet, Superintendent White, what the points will be. I noticed that you have here that it will be calculated at some point in the future. The biggest mistake that was made in the past was that all the emphasis was put on academics in calculating the points for high schools, and we didn't put enough emphasis on students who are pursuing technical careers. So this is a good step forward in that it seems to be moving towards giving credit for dual enrollment in courses that are taken in the vocational area. So I commend the superintendent for proposing this. But again, I'm hoping that if we need to make some adjustments in the future, that can be done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a late public comment, but would like to welcome it. Ashley McReynolds. Any board comments?
I am so confused with the way we're breaking this up, but if I'm in order, a young lady presented me a copy of concerns that she and other counselors have regarding the Jump Start program. She identifies the possible issues and the possible solutions, and oftentimes there are individuals who present the problems, but they don't offer solutions. And rather than read this report, I am going to present it to you, Superintendent White, so that you can review the concerns and the solutions offered. You have indicated that you have solicited input from individuals across the state. I know that you did host community forums. So I am going to pass this report down and ask you to please review it, and then possibly at the next meeting, share some of the concerns noted and then your response to the solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Appreciate that. We are moving approval of Bulletin 111. So we have a motion and a second. Do I hear any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item, we are going to be considering Bulletin 746.
So on page 22, the department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent. This is Bulletin 746.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second, but I would like to offer an amendment to that motion.
Thank you.
Are you ready for me to amend it? Okay. So this is in order to allow our current CTE teachers more time to meet the new requirements. I'd like to propose an amendment to Section 504. This revision will allow any current CTE educator whose CTTIE2 certificate expires in the next 5 years a renewal extension until September 1st, 2019, if they do not already meet the new eligibility criteria. I move to approve as a notice of intent revisions to Bulletin 746 as presented by the LDE, amending Section 504.2 to read, and this is for the board members, this is the highlighted piece that you're getting. All educators holding CTTIE2 certificates shall meet the criteria in Section 506C by September 1st, 2019. To allow time to meet new eligibility requirements, CTTIE2 certificates set to expire before September 1st, 2019 may be renewed up to but not beyond September 1st, 2019 if the candidate successfully meets the standards of effectiveness for at least 3 years during the 5-year initial or renewal period pursuant to Bulletin 130 and RS 173902.
Do I have a second for that amendment?
I have a question as far as clarification.
Do I have a second first?
I'll second it
Thank
to
you.
allow
Thank you,
discussion.
Mr. Vega.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Ms. Bofi, so currently, we're going to extend their certification into September 2019?
It's to give them an opportunity. So since we're presenting new eligibility criteria, we don't want anyone who might have started to get caught on a timeline. So this is giving everybody an opportunity to meet this new eligibility criteria.
Okay, so it's like we're grandfathering them in. However,
no, well, we're giving them additional time because we're changing the requirements. So we don't want to change the requirements, and if they're in year 4 of a 5-year period, they would only have 1 year to meet the new requirements. So we want to give them the same amount of time as everybody else since these requirements are being changed.
I have 2 public comments, Lee Barrios and Deborah Mo? Thank you.
Good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Deborah Moe. I am president of the Louisiana Association of Educators. I am not up here necessarily to speak in opposition, although my card said opposition, to the Jump Start program. I have concerns about it. One of the concerns I have is not really actually cogent here, but I'm going to voice it anyway. I'm concerned that the funding mechanism for Jump Start, similar to that of Course Choice, is technically not constitutional. I know that it will go to school districts who will then pay the providers, but I have voiced my opposition to that. But my real reason for being up here this morning is I noticed that there is a model for taking private industry providers who don't have classroom experience and sending them through new teacher workshops. I don't really know much about that. I guess it eluded me when I did talk with Mr. White. My question is this similar to a TFA model whereby the candidates coming into the classroom would receive a 5-week kind of training before they hit the classroom? I also would like to know how these new teachers will be evaluated. We have to use the compass. Is there any plan for any kind of an evaluation system for these particular individuals? Will they get effectiveness ratings, such as we do? Will it be built on quantitative and qualitative criteria? Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I'd also like to know how the compensation model will work. I would assume that these individuals would be paid by their companies, and then they would also be paid by the school district or the state. I'm not sure what that model would be. Will there be someone who will oversee the entire program, or will this be left up to the school districts to do it individually? Who would compensate these instructors? One of the most important things that I'm worried about is how will we assure qualities of the providers, and I know that that's been addressed, but I'm especially concerned about people being able to handle teams, and also to be able to provide for our special needs students the accommodations that they would need in a classroom setting, or even in a hands-on kind of practicum intern type of situation. I'd like to know who would be liable if a teen, under the supervision of someone who's not education certified, who would be liable for that teen and for the if they're under that supervision. I have a lot of questions about how we're going to train our private providers, and if it's at all possible, I'd like to have some answers. I see this as one more example of the fact that we're building the plane as we fly it. And I don't know about anyone else, but when I was in physics, that particular kind of situation would have been impossible and really just a disaster waiting to happen. I really would like to know more of the details about who's going to provide this particular, these particular courses to our kids. Who's going to be teaching our children? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mo. That's the end of our public comments. Any other discussion?
I'll just respond to a couple of items there just so we're clear. There has long time been a certificate called the CTTIE certificate in the state, which is for professionals coming out of craft trades, out of information technology, healthcare type professions, and so they can come in and teach our kids. This has been a big struggle because those professions are so lucrative and teaching is not so lucrative. So it's very hard to get somebody to step away from a $100,000 a year electrician job to take a $45,000 a year teaching job. One way we can help is by taking down some of the barriers to them getting there. They currently have to take 45 credit hours, so 15 college courses essentially, in order to be eligible to do that. We're proposing to take that down, but only if they have a professional certificate themselves. So in other words, if you are an electrician coming in to teach, we want you to be a certified NCCER electrician coming into our schools. Then you have to take, as was said, a set of pedagogical workshops, and then you become eligible for that. This is to speed the process, to essentially speed it up. With respect to any private providers like Associated Builders and Contractors, for example, the Cyber Innovation Center in Bossier Parish, for example, these are private providers of career education. If it is funded through some of the dollars we're talking about later, it would have to be approved by BESE, to answer the question.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other discussion? Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. We will be considering Bulletin 118.
That's on page 28, and the department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
So moved.
Mr. Lee moved. Any second? Mr. Giga. Thank you. I have two public comments, Lee Barrios and Michael Desatel. Yes. Mr. Desatel. Yes, section D.
Thank you. My name is Michael Desatel. I'd like to speak on both items D and E because they're very closely related. Again, I would just simply ask that the board make sure that when we approve a career pathway that it's flexible enough. I heard many comments here that showed that many of our students who are trying to get into the career pathway don't have a flexible enough curriculum. And with the end of course test that we have, and Superintendent White, maybe you can correct me, but as I understand, we'll still have all the same end of course tests for all the students, even those that are in the career pathway. Is that correct?
Well, a student wouldn't take an end-of-course test if they didn't take the course. So, for example, many Jumpstart kids won't take Algebra 2 and won't take won't take English 3. So if there is an Algebra 2 EOC ever, they wouldn't take that, and they currently wouldn't take the English 3 end-of-course, for example.
Well, then, will it be a requirement for graduation that they pass end-of-course tests?
As it is today, yes.
Yeah, that's a bit of my concern, is that there may be kids that are trapped in this. And we heard comments about these students with disabilities. I think that's very important for them. They may run into a brick wall on some of these end-of-course tests and also on some of the course requirements. I'm going to work very closely again with the two authors of the legislation, with their legislation they have this year, and I'm really going to ask that they push for flexibility in the courses that the students are required to take. It doesn't do us any good to have another college prep curriculum for the career pathway. It didn't work the last time we did it. We had over 90% of our students participating in the Core 4, and they're still not, many of them are still not ready for college. So it doesn't really, to force kids to take courses that they don't need and that they're not interested in is a mistake. I just want to put that caution out there.
And I actually don't disagree with it. I think your reading of it might maybe misinterpret what I'm saying, so I want to be clear. There are 6 courses currently that require an end-of-course test. The reason that that I'm comfortable having the end-of-course test graduation requirement apply to career diploma students, not Jumpstart students. They can take either a career diploma or a Core 4 diploma. But to a student pursuing the career diploma, is that those include Algebra 1, typically taken in the freshman year, whether you take it in 2 parts or whether you take it in 1, typically taken in the freshman year. English 2, typically taken in the sophomore year. And either biology or U.S. history, thus those can be taken in one of them at least can be taken in the sophomore year. All you're talking about is requiring a student on a career diploma to pass an English 2 test, sophomore test, an Algebra 1 test, a freshman test, and a biology or a U.S. history test, either a freshman or a sophomore test, at the level of FAIR. We're not requiring an English 3 test. We're not even requiring a geometry test for the career diploma. In fact, I believe the legislation that I saw introduced on the House side this year actually removes and makes more flexible the junior and senior year so that kids can go spend more time pursuing their Jumpstart credential during the junior and senior year. I don't say any of this to argue with you, Mike. In fact, I say it to agree with you. We're trying to allow these to be freshman and sophomore requirements so that kids have the ability to go and spend more time in the junior and senior year pursuing their industry credential.
Thank you for that answer. We totally agree. And I think we're on the right path. We just need to be flexible with these kids. And especially, let's listen to the parents of the students with disabilities. We need to find a better pathway for those students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just would like to ask for clarification. Now, Superintendent White, as it relates to Jumpstart, there is a pilot phase. So as we engage in that pilot phase, as we identify problems, those problems will come back before us and we will address those, just to give, I guess, reassurance to those who voice concerns today. And I do agree with many of the comments raised by Ms. Moe. And, you know, I mean, it's something new and different. And as an educator, I'm not sure of all of the particulars. And, you know, as we move forward, like once again, with the concerns acknowledged, I think that we would have to revisit.
Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll be considering Bulletin 741.
And that's on page 31, and the department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Okay. Discussion. We have 4 public comments, and I'd like to invite Lee Barrios, Deidre Burrell, Quirkita Matlock, and Michael Desautels to the table, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Superintendent White and other members of BESE. I'm happy to be presenting to you this morning. I am the Executive Director for the Orleans Public Education Network, and I come rendering our qualified support for Jumpstart. I will frame my comments in the rigor, relevance, and relationship context, which I think Jumpstart appropriately applies to as we think about the work that needs to be done in high schools, and Jumpstart's an appropriate step in that direction. As a nation, of course, we've been talking for several years about the importance of college readiness and workforce readiness being aligned, and Jumpstart appropriately does that. It gets us to a standard where our young people have a rigorous, complex skill set when they graduate, both in soft skills and academic skills, and gives them a set of choices, a path to somewhere, either a career or college readiness. And so in that regard, we support Jumpstart. We think the area, however, that Jumpstart, where our qualified support comes in, is really around relationships. There is a critical linchpin in Jumpstart that is contingent upon relationships, both the relationships that parents have with their young people and the school counselors with young people, and that critical decision making that will have to happen both for our transitional 8th and 9th graders as they come in and school support to them at that area, but also between the 10th and 11th grade as young people begin to make a decision about what career path or college diploma path that they will choose. Our organization in February hosted, because we felt like this issue is really important, a community comment session, and really gave community members an opportunity to weigh in so that we could file those comments in the public record before the final proposal was completed. We were surprised, however, that despite all of the cards that were completed, we ended up with a plethora of questions. And so we had, and I will leave those with you, Mr. Superintendent and fellow members of BESE. We'd welcome responses to those so that we can get them to the community. But what we got more often than not were questions about what does this mean? What will it mean in terms of accountability? What will it mean in terms of mobility, in terms of young people who move from one part of the state to another part of the state? How do we support informed decision making in choosing a career path? The role of the business community, and how involved and engaged will the business community be, because that's an integral component of the success of the career path, the support that in professional development that teachers will receive, and questions about alignment with Common Core, and then a set of miscellaneous questions. With that being raised, we raised it is our humble request to ask that you consider delaying the basic diploma for an additional year. In alignment with your current timeline on the policy implementation timeline, regional groups will have selected in 2015-16, will have selected all of their approved recommendations by the end of what will be young people's sophomore year, and those will be in place at the beginning of the junior year. As you know, in New Orleans, there's a lot happening in the economic development area. Prosperity NOLA lays out a great path of what those opportunities are. We do believe that in New Orleans there will be great opportunities, but there will be a need for additional time for young people to be able to, for example, in creative and digital media, which is a fast-growing area in our region, for young people, for the the path to be laid out and young people to be able to take that path as a viable path to career. So we respectfully request a delay in the timeline, only in the two areas. One would be the basic diploma, and then the second is the related accountability tied to that.
And Ms. Burrell, I wanted to say that we appreciated hosting the network at Xavier.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And can I leave these questions there for you?
Thank you. Ms. Madlock.
Hello, Betsy and Superintendent White. I am the policy analyst for Orleans Public Education Network, and I just want to mirror my executive director and the members of OPEN and state that we do support Jumpstart with the proper implementation. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madlock. And it's good seeing you again. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. And we are now on
Bulletin 1566, page 34. Pupil progression policies and procedures. The department recommendation is to approve as the notice of intent.
Motion to approve. Mr. Lee, second. Dr. Jones. And we have 4 public comments. Amanda Serpes, Debbie Moe, Julie Como, and Lee Barrios. Thank you. Ms. Serpes.
Oh, I get to go first? Yay. First, I just wanted to kind of point out to something Superintendent White had said. None of the parents here ever questioned that there were entrance requirements for Jumpstart, but we do acknowledge that there are exit requirements, and that's where the ACT score comes into play.
Can I just say, there is no ACT exit requirement either. ACT has nothing to do with Jumpstart. There's no requirements for exiting the program based on the ACT.
Under the package that you guys sent out, it is in the career diploma graduation requirements. The very last thing is required testing.
Would you mind if I saw it? Thank you. Okay, so it says that students will take it.
It says all graduates are required to achieve a standard end of course test result. Students also must take the ACT.
Students must take it, and they must. And work keys is the same. The end of course tests are the same, so they have to take it. Doesn't have any bearing. How they do doesn't have any bearing on whether they graduate or whether they exit Jumpstart.
The student's highest equivalent score would generate the accountability points to finish the program.
It doesn't say to finish to finish the program.
But if they do not score the test, which it also says in there that they are going to put together, the Department of Education will establish a policy creating score level equivalents. So we were just told that if they do not score the 18 or to be established scoring, that they will receive a 0 in that point. So
to be clear, the state administers the ACT as a state test. It's just like the LEAP. It's just like the iLEAP. You take it with accommodations, just like the LEAP and just like the iLEAP, just like the end of course tests. For a student that has those IEPs requires accommodations, they take it with accommodations.
Right.
However, that has no bearing on whether you graduate from high school. It has no bearing on the student's grades. The student doesn't get any points one way or the other for it. They can get college admission with it, but that's all. Now, we instituted this year work keys out of some feedback, people saying, well, wait a minute, we want to be fair to kids who are not pursuing the 4-year university path or maybe even the 2-year college path. We want to be fair that there's a test. So we're allowing students to take work keys. And when we award points to the school, we might use work keys instead of the ACT. That's not about the kid. That's about the school. Kids do not take for admissions, for graduation, or for exit from Jumpstart, from the career diploma, or from the Core 4 diploma, the ACT, or the work keys test.
Okay. Well, it's under the graduation requirements, so maybe it should be under another place in the policy.
It says required testing. Students must take these tests. It does not say anything about it being required in order to graduate, but I take your point.
Right.
I take your point. We'll take another look at that document. Thank you very much.
That's fine. Well, I do have another, the main reason I was here, but I just wanted to point out that we weren't saying that there was any entrance requirements. This is my son, Reese. Today is his birthday. Today he turns 8. It has been a roller coaster since he's been born. Together, he and I have experienced the highs of highs and lows of lows. My son has taught me so much about life. He has taught me to be humble and appreciative. He has also taught me to be patient beyond measure. But the one thing that he's taught me the most is to never give up. He is one of the hardest little boys I know, working little boys I know. Everything he does requires more work than his typical peers, but he never ever gives up. And lucky for me, this smile almost never fades. How could that not make me proud as his mother? It does. Each year, I sit through his IEPs, multiple IEPs, and to put together an educational plan for him that's individualized for his needs and his success. His goals may take a little bit longer than most, but he definitely does it, and he never gives up. He does it with a grace and a smile that never fades. I am so proud of him. Currently, in the state of Louisiana, his efforts of hard work go unnoticed and definitely unrewarded. This is the only thing that matters now is performance on a test. A single test. How is that fair? How is this a true measure of his success when he does succeed on so many other things? It's not. And if you can still think that it is, I will let each one of you look into his eyes and tell him that he is not good enough, because I most certainly will not. And I will not give up until he has the same opportunity that every child does. And that is all we're asking for. And that is it.
Thank you, Mrs. Surface. Appreciate that. Mrs. Moe.
Thank you. To play off on what previous speaker has said, the ACT has to be taken by every single child unless they have an IEP and then they're opted in. If a child does not make an 18 on the ACT, the school receives no points. So
I'm going to clarify that. And I apologize, Debbie, for interrupting, but I cannot accept, first of all, this is not on this agenda item, I don't believe, for whatever that's worth. Secondly, a student can demonstrate progress so that they did better from their Explore test to their ACT, and they get points even if they didn't get 18. Second, we just passed the work keys at the request of the legislature, so that a student can substitute and can take the work keys if that's a better test, and a school can get points. And third, and I think this often gets mistaken, we're not talking about the kid not getting a benefit. We're talking about the school not getting a benefit in their letter grade. So we've accounted for your concern about the school not getting points through the progress points. We've also accounted for it by the work keys, but none of this impacts the kid, their grades, or their ability to graduate. This is just about the school's letter grade. I want to be clear about that. I apologize for interrupting. I just couldn't let the facts go unsaid.
Well, I'm not going to interrupt you, John, but that's not my point. My point is that if the child doesn't make enough points for the SBS score, or gets a 0 because of the ACT is too low, then they have the option to take the work keys. However, it shouldn't be both. In certain cases, and I don't say that every child should be given this option, but I do believe that there should be consideration given to those kids who, for whatever reason, do not or will not be able to succeed on the ACT to take the work keys.
Thank you, Ms.
It should be a choice. I have several other points as well. In the graduation points, the SBS points, I do not understand why dual enrollment receives significantly less points than either the International Baccalaureate or the AP tests.
I can explain that. I would also again point out this is not on this agenda item, but putting that aside, courses receive a student who passes a course, an AP course, a dual enrollment course for TOPS, an IB course, they get 110 points. When students pass a college level test, they get 150 points. So it's an AP course, dual enrollment course, international baccalaureate course at 110 points. They pass a test, it's 150 points. Why is that? The test is harder to pass than the course is. Is that cleared up?
But when a child finishes a dual enrollment course, they actually have college credit. They have passed the requirements of the course.
I understand
They
that.
have been given credit by a university. I do not understand why that would require less points.
Well, then we have a disagreement, but let me give you the facts on it. 93% of dual enrollment kids who take a course pass the course. Only 48% of kids who take an AP test pass that test. They're just different levels of difficulty. And that AP test, when you pass it, gives you credit to any college in America. That dual enrollment course gives you some credit, but it's limited where it can be applied. Thank you.
Okay. I may have misunderstood when I read through the item that is for this particular agenda item, but it was a PowerPoint, and I thought that these questions were all covered by that PowerPoint.
Do you
Another
have
question that
anything else to address this
Well,
section?
just a couple of more questions. I don't understand why the GED diploma has significantly less points also. I do understand that it is considered adult education, but there are many GED programs in some of our schools, and the test itself is not a namby-pamby test. It's a very difficult test. Those were some of the things that I saw in the PowerPoint that I had questions about, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Moe. And our last public comment, Julie Como.
My name is Julie Como. I'm from Iberia Parish, and I am the educational liaison for the Tuberous Sclerosis Alliance here in Louisiana. And I was actually supposed to be in D.C. this week advocating for my families in Louisiana with my peers, but the weather changed that, so I'm here. TSC is a rare disease that affects 1 in 6,000 people. 80% of those individuals will develop epilepsy, and there is a high rate of autism. Nearly every system in the body is affected in some way by this complex disease. But the most challenging that we have is the host of learning and behavioral issues manifested by tuberous sclerosis. Every person with TSC is affected differently, and there is no way to predict the progression of the disease. We have a family in Lafayette that has 3 members of the family with tuberous sclerosis. Mom was unaware that she had it until she had her second daughter diagnosed with it. They all have the characteristics, the tumors in the brain, tumors in the kidneys, tumors on the retinas, and as well as the face. Another child from Monroe also has a very unique case. She has complications of tuberous sclerosis, and she developed leukemia in 2012. She's not even a teenager yet. There is no way anyone could prepare for a diagnosis of tuberous sclerosis, let alone a diagnosis of cancer. But if doctors can diagnose cancer early, patients can take the measures to make treatment successful. The same is true for our kids with TSC. Early intervention, early childhood therapies, and appropriate support systems in school ensure their success. My 14-year-old son, Matthew, has tuberous sclerosis. He has tumors in his kidneys on both retinas, and they appear on his face. He currently has cortical tumors in his brain and calcified tumors near the ventricles. They have been there since birth. He has had epilepsy his entire life. He has multiple learning disabilities and extreme developmental delays. He has autism. He was not potty trained until he was 10, and he still cannot tie his shoes. He has successfully progressed to the 7th grade. He has an individual educational plan and takes the Louisiana alternate assessment too. He scores pre-foundational in ELA and basic in math. In 2013, we pursued a private neuropsychological evaluation that helped us understand his deficiencies. While his full-scale IQ was 61, Matthew's greatest deficiency is his processing speed, which our report explains is a result of his medical history and seizures and tumors. He is described to be more like an individual with traumatic brain injury than a child with autism. His perceptual reasoning is 84. He can learn. On behalf of parents living with a variety of learning disabilities, developmental delays in their children, living with epilepsy, children with brain tumors, children with autism, and families living with childhood cancer, consider the value of our children's success based on their achievements. Our tuberous sclerosis children fall under all of these umbrellas. You cannot pick one and educate and promote them based on the same standards as a neurotypical child. Many of them can and will succeed despite what low test scores say about their real potential. One statement is repeated with every assessment in Matthew's neuropsych evaluation. This is considered to be an underestimate of his true abilities. Standardized tests used in children with tuberous sclerosis will never be a measure of their true potential, and they should not be used to determine their promotion.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I want to add one more thing. I understood that there were 70% of our kids that were not making it into college, and that was the reason for, I forgot. But I want to know how many of those kids have this laid out as their educational plan. If we have a child that is this individual in their needs, this is my son's IEP, his neuropsych evaluation, a guide distributed by the Tuberous Sclerosis Alliance specifically for educating children with tuberous sclerosis. And if we have a child or children in Louisiana with these specific needs, then how do we set the same standards on them for progression?
Can I just, first of all, I want to thank both of you for being here, and your stories are really touching, and I thank you for all the time you've spent sharing them with us. I know that's not easy. Just so I want to make sure our board understands what you're talking about, because sometimes it's so much going on. Am I right in saying that what you believe is that your kids should graduate from high school when they get to that age, based on what's in their IEP and not based on the end of course requirements? Is the end of course test requirements? Is that what you're suggesting?
I am suggesting that as a group of individuals that sit down, that comprise the IEP team that know our child best, to say what is growth for that child, we know children that excel greatly in regular education settings but cannot pass a high stakes testing. To have that as the only bar of progression and promotion, that's not fair.
And so for graduation in high school.
Right, obviously, yes.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to make it clear for them.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we hear any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item.
Next item is on page 35, item 3.3. Consideration of revisions to Bulletin 111, the Louisiana School District and State Accountability System, related to the letter grade methodology during the assessment transition and the progress point calculations. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We have a public comment. Lee Barrios. Dr. Beebe.
Yes, ma'am. Again, I would like to, at the request of Herb Bassett, who could not be with us today, he is a teacher from Grayson, Louisiana, and he is a band and math certified teacher. As it relates to progress points, Mr. Bassett says that LDOE proposes changes to the bonus points to be called progress points calculation. While the DOE fixes one important problem, it moves in the wrong direction, creating new problems. So I oppose the change and hopes it will go back and fix all the problems. Progress points will be even more misleading for parents making school choices than the bonus points were this year. A parent should be able to directly compare the progress points two schools earned to know at which her child is most likely to succeed. As proposed, they are rendered useless for comparing schools by scoring method that skews the scores. A parent of a non-proficient student needs clear information about the percentage of non-proficient students who meet or exceed their growth expectations in a school. Progress points often award higher scores to schools that have lower success rates, meeting or exceeding the growth expectations. A school that earns 10 points does not always offer a non-proficient student a greater probability of success than a school that earns 6 points. Parents, therefore, are misled by comparing the number of bonus points, in parentheses, progress points earned. Bonus points were given on the school report cards. One cause of this is LDOE's scoring method using the number or percent, whichever is higher results in awarding points. The scoring method gives greater reward to large, low-performing schools and those configured with the maximum number of schools in the grade levels 4 through 8 that are counted towards progress points. Another cause is the awarding of double point values for students who start the year unsatisfactory. These students essentially count twice in the calculation of points, which skews the scores from indicating the actual success rate. Progress points introduce a new, possibly unintended way of misleading parents and stakeholders. This results from LDOE's proposal to reduce the point values K-8 formula by half. Last year, any school with at least 10 non-proficient students had the theoretical possibility of earning the maximum of 10 points. I raised the issue of fairness since small schools had to reach 100% to earn the maximum, whereas a large, low-performing school could earn the maximum with as low as a 30% achievement. This year, LDOE dispenses with the illusion of fairness. The maximum a school can earn will vary from 5 to 10 points based on how it starts. A small school with no unsatisfactory students is limited to 5 points maximum. A small school with equal numbers approaching basic and unsatisfactory are limited to 7.5 points. Large schools with at least 200 non-proficient students will still have the possibility of earning 10 points regardless of the approaching basic unsatisfactory ratio. This limits the usefulness of comparing scores. Parents and stakeholders will not know if a school earned 3 out of a possible 5 points or 3 out of a possible 10 points. LDOE will not indicate what the maximum possible number of points was for each school. Raising the threshold for earning points of a 50% achievement K-8 conceals information from parents and will create large fluctuations in scores over consecutive years resulting from very minor changes in performance. Schools with both 10 and 49% success rates will receive zeros. Parents cannot glean information about school performance by comparing two zeros. The school with the 49% success rate is clearly the better choice. The 50% threshold will create a situation where a school might have a 52% success rate one year and then a 48% success rate the next. In a large school, this could produce a 10-point swing in score. LDOE's proposal fixes the problem created by non-proficient students moving to proficiency. I propose the following, which would make progress points a useful tool for parents trying to make a school choice. The calculation based on the actual number must be dropped. He proposes, Mr. Bassett proposes to use the percent only, eliminate the threshold requirement. All students who start the year non-proficient count even if they reach proficiency. Multiply the percent of the above students who meet or exceed their growth expectations by the multiplier of 0.1. No separate multipliers. For combination schools, if the school is eligible for progress points in both the K-8 and 9 to 12 component. Furthermore, I recognize there will be opposition to this, and it is of the least practical value. Schools which are not eligible for progress points will have their scores adjusted by 160 over 150 to compensate for their lack of eligibility. These policies eliminate the need for an artificial cap. Give scores will range from 0 to 10 and directly reflect the probability that a student starting the year non-proficient will make significant growth. Parents will be able to use the progress points in choosing the best schools for their children. Again, I do have, I will present copies of this to each of you and ask that we include it in the record.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe.
I did change my mind.
I see that.
It's pretty discouraging. That's why sometimes I just pass. Lee Barrios, retired teacher, St. Tammany. When the legislature, the sales pitch to the legislature for switching to letter grades for school performance scores was that parents could understand letter grades. And parents do understand letter grades. They understand that when a child has a series of tests or assessments or graded projects, those scores are averaged, and that's their performance score. This has become so complicated and convoluted, the purpose of which only is to be able to manipulate these scores to produce the outcome that the manipulator wishes. Parents don't understand this. I doubt, and we'll see when the legislature opens in the committee meetings, if any legislator understands or can explain a school performance score and how it's calculated. We need to go back to something parents can understand, something that is fair and equitable, and if we truly believe in the power of a standardized test score to reflect achievement, then that's what needs to be used exclusively. It isn't capable of doing that, which lends itself to all this manipulation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any opposition to the motion?
I have a question, if I may. Mr. Superintendent, could you explain to me the rationale behind the scale argument in terms of the numbers of students at a particular school and the impact on how we calculate the school performance score?
Tell me what you mean by the
threshold of there being a certain number of students making you eligible for a certain amount of progress points versus being another size.
Got it. So if there are fewer than 10 students in what we call the subgroup, you're not eligible. Why is that? Two reasons. Number one, if you really only have fewer than 10 students in your subgroup, then your school is already going to have a very high letter grade. Second, we think that, when you talk about a school that has, say, 200, 300 kids who are achieving below basic, comparing that to a school that has 3, 4, 5, you really start to get into, is this really an achievement worthy of the bonus? Now, I would say that this year, under this change, we go from 150 schools which are ineligible for the rationale you're describing to 50 schools statewide that are ineligible out of 1,400. Which essentially leaves you with basically 50 very small alternative schools.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Beebe?
One follow-up comment. When we discuss letter grades, and I think through our actions, we have acknowledged the actions based on addressing the concerns of high-stakes tests, 4th and 8th grade, and yet we are determined to give the letter grades. And letter grades can be detrimental, particularly with public perception. And if our goal as a State Board of Education, if we're truly about working with education stakeholders, and we recognize that, with the transitioning to Common Core standards, and that we have had teachers who were responsible for writing the curriculum when they lacked the skill sets to write a curriculum, but yet we're still holding school systems and schools accountable by the assignment of letter grades. I just don't get it, but I guess I do get it because I know the agenda. Let's give the traditional public schools the black eye. They're failing, and let's create opportunities for charter schools. And I think, and I'm praying that the legislature will listen, the legislators, as they move forward with the legislative session, that they will put a moratorium on charter schools. Stop it. Stop the madness. Work with traditional systems to help it. And if charters have the silver bullet, share it with traditional systems. But it's really hurting us. Particularly when you get the letter grades, and some districts are at a current level of functioning. I don't care if you give them a letter grade. They've had limited resources, and then we're still going to hold them accountable when we know this has been a transition period, a difficult period, limited resources, the non-availability of certified teachers, and I could go on and on. But again, we need to stop the madness.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe.
I have a question.
Any opposite? Oh, Ms. Gill, I'm sorry.
For Superintendent White, in regards to the letter grades, in our previous board meeting, maybe 2 board meetings, that we discussed the SPS scores and the letter grading in regards to the Park assessment, because we know the rigor of the Park assessment, that it's going to be much more rigorous than the LEAP, and our LEAP. So I guess my concern would be, I know we asked to put a halt on the letter grading and continue with the SPS scores. So with this component here for the school performance scores, how would this make a difference in regards to what we discussed in our previous meeting with the Park assessment?
Well, as we discussed, we are providing an additional 2 years of time to learn the new expectations when there won't be the same accountability stakes. In that period, the letter grade, if schools' scores go down, then the letter grades will be held constant, same distribution as they were before, except if schools go up, then they'll be honored. And so they wouldn't be hurt if by the curved distribution. So at worst, the distribution of letter grades stays the same. At best, schools go up.
Okay. So even with this new recommendation of change, it will still be consistent?
Absolutely.
That's my concern.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Are we ready for the vote? Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none. Last item.
Your last item is on page 44, consideration of public comment received regarding revisions to Bulletin 135, Health and Safety, Section 501, Injury Management Program, Section 503, Injury Management Program Protocol for Educational Training on Serious Sports Injuries, Section 505, Injury Management Program Protocol for Serious Sports Injuries, and Section 701, Definitions. The department recommendation is to receive the summary of public comment and agency response and direct staff to proceed with the final adoption of the notice of intent.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, this concludes our committee meeting. Mr. Guillot.
I'd like to convene admin and finance at 1:15.
And thanks for all the public comments today. We really appreciated them. Thank you.